Good morning. We're coming to you from the deck. It's chilly. It is a Sunday. My dogs are out here with me. And boy, we're going to stay at a high level today as we wrap up Genesis. I read chapters 37 through 50 this morning. 50! And I'm going to have the overall theme that I pulled out was don't be afraid to dream big. Now, some of you, if you're not familiar with the Bible, you still may be somewhat familiar with the story of Joseph, which is what these chapters, the end of Genesis, focus on, is one of Jacob's sons with Rachel. His firstborn was Joseph. And Joseph wasn't liked all that much by all of his other brothers. And as they grew, he became even less favorite because he started having big dreams, like literal dreams that he would share. And some of his dreams, he was shown the vision that one day his brothers and even his mother and dad would be kind of bowing down to him, or his dad would be. And, sibling rivalry is pretty natural. We all want to be kind of top dog in the family. When there's a lot of brothers and sisters, sometimes the one that's dreaming bigger, or that might be the favorite. And Joseph was the favorite of Jacob because that was his firstborn with his true love, Rachel. A lot of his other children were, he had through Leah, which he didn't want to marry Leah. He was kind of forced into that, and he did not love Leah the way that he loved Rachel. So it's natural to understand this stuff still happens and goes on today in families. So fighting for attention, fighting for mom and dad's love, like all the things. But Joseph was bold about sharing his dreams. He's like, dude, it's a dream. I had it. What do you want me to tell you? Well, they didn't want him to tell any of it. They like, keep it to yourself. And they didn't like it. So they devised a plan that when they got older and they were out traveling and they were all shepherds, they devised a plan to kill Joseph after one of his. And he had a dream. You might have heard, there's a play called Joseph's Technicolor Dream Coat, something like that, inspired by this story. And so he had this coat that he would wear, and they had a plan to kill Joseph. But one of the brothers, Reuben, the firstborn by Leah, said, I don't think we should really do this. So he actually had pushed him into, they found I think it was like a cistern. They pushed him into the hole, and then they decided to tell their dad, Jacob, that he had been killed by a wild animal, and they dipped his coat in goat's blood. And of course, Jacob was very sad and upset. Well, some other people came along, saw Joseph in the hole, and took him. And then they decided to sell him into slavery. I might be getting some of these little tidbits. I'm trying to give you a high level overview. Like, there was a lot in 14 chapters of Genesis this morning. So it's high level flyby. There was a lot of other real nuggets that can be gleaned out from each sentence of these chapters, and other stories in and of themselves along the way. But again, I'm doing a high level flyby. And when he was sold, he ended up being taken to Egypt, and he was sold to a man named Potiphar. And Potiphar, and he was beloved by Potiphar. He did a great job. He was a slave but ended up rising to the top of Potiphar's household. I mean, Potiphar trusted him with everything, and his wealth grew with Joseph's skills in management. But Potiphar's wife kept trying to seduce him. Like, he was a young, strapping, handsome man, evidently, and Potiphar's wife wanted some of that. And he refused. He was like, no, no. And finally, she just got angry. And he one time in particular, she was trying to have her way, and he just had to get out of there, and he left his coat, his famous coat. Which is interesting that he had a coat, but then it was sold and taken back to his brother. Ooh, I just noticed that. Like, see, some of these, if you get too caught up in the details of the story, then you'll find it's like, wait a minute, how did he have a coat there and a coat there, but the coat over here? Anyway, but that's not the point of the story. So, the Potiphar's wife noticed that he left the coat, and she, capitalized on the situation and claimed rape. Like, oh, he tried to rape me, but I was able to get away. And so he all of a sudden found himself in sudden disgrace, cast out, arrested. So he ended up in the jails, in prison in Egypt. And he spent quite a while there. But while he was there, there was, I think it was a couple of guards. No, it was the cupbearer and the Pharaoh's baker and cupbearer were somehow they were having a conversation, and they were sharing their dreams. And, being the dreamer that he is, Joseph was able to interpret their dreams, and the dreams came true. And the cupbearer, and Joseph said, well, please remember me and tell Pharaoh if this comes true and you get Pharaoh's ear, tell him, about my skills with fortune telling and dream telling, so that I can maybe get out of prison. But the cupbearer did get out of prison. He got back into his role as cupbearer, didn't say a word to Pharaoh. 2 more years went by. 2 years he's in prison. And then finally, Pharaoh starts having some very vivid and odd dreams, and nobody can figure them out. All of the smartest people in his realm, in his kingdom, nobody can understand his dreams. And then all of a sudden the cupbearer goes, hey, wait a minute, I remember this guy in prison. And so they go and get Joseph, and Joseph was able right away to interpret the dreams. It was about the coming famine that was going to come to Egypt, and the warning to save and store away some of the abundance while times were good, so that they would have food for the kingdom when the famine hit. And so all of that came to pass, and of course they were grateful. Joseph just went right up to the top of Pharaoh in Egypt. He was Pharaoh's right-hand man. He was the governor. Pharaoh was the only person higher than Joseph. So fast forward, all the stories. I'm trying to give you thank you for hanging with me. I'm trying to give you the gist of the story. So he became very good at dreaming. Not only dreaming things for himself, but dreaming and interpreting dreams for other people. And then when the famine did come, Joseph's brothers did end up coming to Egypt because they needed to buy some grain from the storehouses. And Joseph saw his brothers. And here his dream, from way back when, years ago, is about to come true. And somehow they don't recognize their own brother. He recognizes them. They don't recognize him. And all the meanwhile, while he's growing rich too, and helping Egypt get rich, and he's getting rich, people eventually were selling their land and their very selves for food. So they were also building this kingdom of slaves, and even the people from Canaan. So that's where we're going to head in Exodus with the Moses and letting my people go and all of that. Anyway, so this is how so many people got enslaved in Egypt, was during this time when Joseph was in charge and Pharaoh. So anyway, go through all this story. The brothers are there. They go back and forth. He finally reveals who they are. They try to, he devises a plan to catch them in a lie about their younger brother. Where's their younger brother? Go back home and get your younger brother. Prove to me that you're not lying. There's a lot more to this story. Again, I'm high level flyby. And they have to go back home and get Benjamin, who is Joseph's younger brother. There were only two, by Rachel, the woman of Rachel. And Jacob is beside himself. He's like, this is going to kill me. I've already lost Joseph. I will die if anything happens to Benjamin. He's all I have left. I am a old man with white hair, and I can't handle this. But they convince him they have to in order to get the food, and they had to leave one of the other brothers behind in jail at hostage, basically, until they came back with the younger brother. So they get Benjamin back. Eventually, they go again through some back and forth. Joseph finally reveals who he is. He's weeping. He's emotional. The brothers are emotional, but they have a reunion, and all's good. He ends up forgiving them. And so, I mean, talk about holding this. This all happened over years and years. Famine was 7 years. The abundance period was 7 years. The famine period was 7 years. He was in prison for a couple of years. He was at Potiphar's house. He was sold into slavery by his brothers. And you know what he said to his brothers? You meant this for evil, but God was working it out. It was all part of God's plan. Even your evil deed, this was part of God's plan and provision for me. This was my path. He did this, and how grateful he was. So continuing and even expanding on Jacob's attitude of gratitude, Joseph takes it a step further and into the dreaming big and being bold and even proclaiming it. And it ended up coming true. He was the highest ranking person in the land, other than Pharaoh himself, the governor, and his brothers, in fact, did bow down, and he ruled over them. So, man, when God places wild dreams in your heart, and the path may be topsy and turvy, most people, even if they've had those dreams planted in their heart, would have given up at the first sign of difficulty and gotten bitter. But again, similar to his father, he hung in there. He kept trying to see the good in all of it. He worked it all for his own good, just by doing his best wherever he was and being of service. He served Potiphar. He served while he was in the prison. I couldn't help but think thousands of years in advance to Paul, and saying the words, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. He said that in prison because, and I've learned how to have abundance, and I've learned how to have nothing. He wrote those words from prison, talking about his experience in prison. So anyway, I just can't help but see a little bit of foreshadowing there. And Joseph ended up giving land to and moving his whole family, his father, down in the land of Goshen, I believe it was, down from where he was. So he was reunited with his father. He did eventually pass. I think they said Jacob was 147 when he died. And it all worked out. So just because you have a big dream, doesn't mean it's going to be all sunshine and roses on the path to getting there. It may include a couple of years in what feels like a prison. I can testify to that. or at the bottom of a pit, being sold into slavery, people lying, being unfair, mistreating you, betrayal. Like, that could be the path. You just don't know. But hang in there. That doesn't mean that it won't come to pass. We have to be, I wrote down the words also with dreaming big that just were so appropriate. You have to have patient confidence to dream big, to dare to dream big, and to even share your dreams. Like, Joseph could have just kept all that to himself. He didn't. So in a way, even though it set in motion what seemed to be really negative things, it actually set him on the path for having it be fulfilled. Now, that was a message for me that I'm like, ooh, I like to keep things kind of secret for a while. I don't like to always share some of my bigger dreams, because it just feels like, who am I to do that? Like, and then I'm like, well, gosh, if even sharing it, because I'm such a people pleaser, I'm like, I wouldn't want people to feel the way about me that Joseph's brothers felt about him. But maybe sometimes the consequences of that, sorry, it's time for me to go. I've said enough. My dogs are excited because there's another dog walking by. See you tomorrow.